Human baby asked shelter for most unloved bear cub. What they gave shocked everyone. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The morning mist hung low over Pinewood Valley as dawn broke through the trees. In a small cabin at the edge of the forest, little Olivia Murphy stirred in her crib. At just 18 months old, she understood little of the world beyond her window, but her innocent eyes caught everything. Her parents, Emma and Noah Murphy, had moved to this remote location just 3 months ago, seeking peace away from city life. That morning, as Emma prepared breakfast and Noah chopped firewood outside, Olivia stood clutching the wooden bars of her crib, her curious eyes fixed on something moving at the forest's edge. A small, trembling figure emerged from between the trees, a bear cub, no bigger than a large dog. Its fur was patchy and dull, nothing like the glossy coats of healthy bears that occasionally wandered near the cabin. One of its front paws seemed to drag slightly, and its eyes held a look of such profound sadness that even little Olivia seemed to understand it. "Bah! Bah!" Olivia pointed excitedly, bouncing up and down in her crib. The bear cub froze, its ears perking up at the sound of the baby's voice. For a moment, they stared at each other, a human child and a wild animal, connected by something neither could explain. Emma walked into the nursery, wiping her hands on her apron. "What's got you so excited this morning, sweet pea?" she asked, following her daughter's gaze. Her breath caught in her throat when she spotted the cub. "Noah," she called out, her voice tight with fear. "Noah, come quick!" The cub, startled by the loud voice, cowered but didn't run. It seemed too weak, too hungry to move quickly. Noah rushed in, axe still in hand, his face paling as he spotted the wild animal so close to their home. "Keep Olivia inside," he whispered to Emma. "I'll scare it off." But as Noah stepped onto the porch, Olivia began to wail, reaching her tiny hands toward the window, toward the cub. Her cries grew louder when her father approached the animal, and something in her desperate sounds made both parents pause. The cub whimpered, a pitiful sound that echoed Olivia's distress. It took a shaky step forward, not toward Noah with his threatening stance, but toward the window where Olivia's tear-streaked face pressed against the glass. "Noah, wait," Emma said softly, stepping onto the porch with Olivia in her arms. The baby immediately calmed, her sobs turning to hiccups as she stretched her arms toward the cub. "Are you crazy?" Noah hissed. "That's a wild animal." "Look at it, Noah," Emma whispered. "Something's wrong. It's sick or hurt, and look at Olivia." Their daughter had never shown such intense emotion before. Her little face was set with determination as she strained toward the cub, making soft cooing sounds as if trying to comfort it. The bear cub tilted its head, its dark eyes reflecting a glimmer of hope. It took another tentative step forward, then collapsed onto the damp ground, its strength seemingly gone. "Oh, God," Emma gasped. "Noah, we can't just let it die out here." Noah ran a hand through his hair, torn between protecting his family and responding to the undeniable suffering before them. "This is insane," he muttered. "Completely insane." But something strange was happening. The cub's eyes remained fixed on Olivia, and the baby girl had gone completely still in her mother's arms, an unusual serenity washing over her normally active little body. It was as if they understood each other in a way the adults couldn't comprehend. From deeper in the forest came a low, threatening growl. The cub trembled harder, terror evident in its eyes. "That's probably its mother," Noah said urgently. "We need to get inside. Now." But Emma shook her head, her maternal instincts flaring. No, Noah, look at how scared it is. I don't think that's its mother. I think that's what it's running from. The growl came again, closer this time. Without thinking further, Emma rushed down the porch steps, still holding Olivia, and scooped up the frail cub with her free arm. It weighed almost nothing, its small body burning with fever. "Emma!" Noah shouted, but his wife had already turned and was running back to the house, cradling both baby and bear against her chest. Noah had no choice but to follow, slamming the door behind them just as a much larger bear emerged from the trees, its eyes scanning the clearing with malevolent intent. Inside, Emma placed the cub gently on the living room rug. Olivia immediately squirmed to be put down beside it. Against every instinct screaming inside her, Emma lowered her daughter to the floor. The moment Olivia's small hands touched the cub's matted fur, both child and animal seemed to exhale in relief. "What have we done?" Noah whispered, watching as his baby daughter curled up next to a wild predator. "What in God's name have we just done?" Emma had no answer, but as she watched Olivia gently pat the cub's head, her tiny fingers careful and tender, she felt a strange certainty that somehow this impossible moment was meant to be. Outside, the larger bear prowled the edge of their property, its angry growls a reminder of the danger they had invited into their home. What they couldn't know then was how this moment would change not just their lives, but the entire valley, and how the bond forming between a human baby and an unloved bear cub would soon shake their small community to its core. Noah peered through the curtains, his knuckles white as he gripped the windowsill. The large bear, clearly an adult male by its size, paced at the tree line, occasionally rising on its hind legs to sniff the air. Its scarred face and aggressive posture made Noah's stomach turn. "I think it's a male," he whispered to Emma, "and I don't think he's looking for his cub. I think he's hunting it." Emma sat on the floor near Olivia and the cub, unwilling to separate them now that they had both finally calmed. The cub's breathing was shallow, its small body occasionally shuddering with what seemed like pain. "He needs help, Noah," Emma said, deliberately using he instead of it. "Look at his paw. I think it's broken, and he's burning up with fever." Noah turned from the window, conflict etched across his face. "Emma, we don't know anything about caring for wild animals. We should call the ranger station." "And what will they do?" Emma challenged, her voice low but intense. "You know as well as I do. They'll either put him down or send him to some facility far away." As if understanding their conversation, Olivia wrapped her chubby arm around the cub's neck and looked up at her father with wide, pleading eyes. "Bah, stay," she said clearly, the first two-word phrase they had ever heard her speak. The shock of hearing their daughter's voice form actual words momentarily distracted them from the situation. Noah crouched down, amazed. Did she just... Emma nodded, tears forming in her eyes. She wants him to stay. The cub weakly lifted its head and licked Olivia's cheek, causing the baby to giggle. The sound was like sunshine breaking through storm clouds, pure, bright, and somehow healing. Noah felt something shift inside him. He'd grown up in these mountains, had heard all the warnings about wild animals, especially bears. But there was something about this cub that didn't fit with everything he'd been taught to fear. Its eyes held an intelligence, almost a humanity that made him pause. "I know someone who might help," he said finally. "Old Dr. Roswell at the edge of town. He's retired now, but he used to work with the Wildlife Commission. If anyone would know what to do without involving the authorities, it's him." Emma looked up, hope flickering across her face. "Can you reach him?" Noah nodded. "I'll try. But Emma..." He glanced at their daughter, still cuddled against the wild animal. We need to be careful. This is still a bear, no matter how small or sick." "I know," Emma whispered. "But look at them, Noah. Have you ever seen Olivia connect with anything like this? It's like they know each other somehow." Noah couldn't argue with what he was seeing. Their normally shy, quiet daughter was positively glowing as she stroked the cub's fur, completely unafraid. "I'll call Dr. Roswell," he said. "And then I need to go into town for supplies. If we're really doing this, and I must be crazy for considering it, we're going to need medicine, food, and probably a lot of advice." Emma nodded gratefully. "What about—" She gestured toward the window where the adult bear had been prowling. Noah checked again. "He's gone for now, but he'll be back. Bears don't give up easily, especially males with a vendetta. I'll need to reinforce the doors and windows before nightfall." As Noah picked up the phone to call the old veterinarian, Olivia began to hum softly to the cub, a lullaby that Emma often sang to her at bedtime. The cub's eyes drifted closed, its breathing becoming slightly more even as it responded to the baby's gentle touch and voice. Emma felt a tear slide down her cheek. There was danger all around them. The aggressive bear outside, the wild animal in their living room, the risk to their daughter, the potential trouble with authorities if anyone found out. But in that moment, watching her baby comfort a suffering creature, she couldn't bring herself to feel afraid. The connection between Olivia and the cub transcended explanation. It was raw and pure, like something from another time when humans and animals perhaps understood each other better, before fear and dominance had driven them apart. "Hello, Doctor." "Roswell?" Noah's voice broke the silence. "This is Noah Murphy. We've got a situation here I think you might want to see for yourself. It's about a bear cub." He paused, listening. "No, it's not dead or aggressive. It's currently being cradled by my 18-month-old daughter, and I don't know whether to be amazed or terrified." Emma couldn't hear the doctor's response, but the expression on Noah's face shifted from concern to tentative relief. "Yes, we're at the old Anderson cabin, about 6 miles up Pinewood Road," Noah continued. "And doctor, there's a male bear in the vicinity, likely the one who hurt this cub." Yes, I understand. We'll be waiting." He hung up and turned to Emma. "He's coming. Said not to move the cub or try to feed it anything until he arrives." He sounded intrigued. "And the male bear?" Emma asked. "He said to keep all doors and windows locked, and to have my rifle ready, just in case." Noah glanced at his hunting rifle mounted above the fireplace, a relic from his grandfather he'd never actually fired. "I'll get some boards from the shed to secure the windows before I go into town." As Noah stepped outside, carefully checking for signs of the adult bear, Emma settled on the floor beside Olivia and the cub. She had a million questions racing through her mind, but one stood out above all others. What had drawn this particular cub to their home, to their daughter? And why did Olivia seem to understand exactly what the wounded animal needed? The cub shifted in its sleep, whimpering slightly. Without hesitation, Olivia leaned down and pressed her forehead against the cub's, whispering something that sounded like, "Bah, safe now." The cub immediately calmed, as if the baby's words were a powerful medicine that even Emma couldn't administer. In that moment, Emma knew with absolute certainty that whatever had brought this cub to them was no accident. Something larger was at work, something she couldn't begin to comprehend, but could only witness with wonder and, despite all logic, with growing hope. Dr. Samuel Roswell arrived just as Noah finished boarding up the last vulnerable window. The elderly veterinarian stepped out of his ancient truck with surprising agility, his weathered face set in lines of concentration. At 78, he had spent most of his life working with the wild animals of the region, earning him both respect and a reputation for eccentricity. "Where's the patient?" he asked without preamble, hoisting a worn leather medical bag from the passenger seat. Noah led him inside, where Emma still sat vigilant beside Olivia and the sleeping cub. Dr. Roswell stopped in the doorway, his bushy eyebrows shooting up toward his receding hairline. "Well, I'll be damned," he murmured, taking in the scene. "In 50 years of veterinary medicine, I've never seen anything quite like this." He approached slowly, kneeling with a grunt beside Emma. His expert eyes scanned the cub, noting the injured paw, the patchy fur, the signs of malnourishment. "May I?" he asked Olivia directly, gesturing toward the cub. To everyone's surprise, Olivia studied him for a moment, then nodded solemnly, as if granting permission. The old doctor's face softened as he gently began to examine the cub, careful not to startle it awake. "Male, about 5 months old," he murmured. "Compound fracture in the left front paw, signs of infection, severe malnourishment." He looked up at Noah and Emma. "This little fellow's had a rough go of it." "Can you help him?" Emma asked. Dr. Roswell nodded slowly. "The fracture needs to be set, and he needs antibiotics for the infection. The malnutrition will take time to address." He paused, studying the cub's face. "But there's something else going on here. Look at these marks around his muzzle and neck." Noah leaned closer. "Are those bite marks?" "Yes," Dr. Roswell confirmed grimly. "And not from predators. These are from another bear, likely the mother or, more probably given what you saw, the dominant male in the area." "Why would they attack one of their own cubs?" Emma asked, horrified. The doctor sighed. "It happens sometimes, especially with first-time mothers or in areas where food is scarce, but this—" he gestured to the numerous wounds. "This is deliberate, repeated, almost ritualistic." He stroked his chin thoughtfully. "I've heard of cases where a cub born with defects or unusual coloring is rejected, even attacked by its own kind. Sort of a brutal, natural selection." "What's unusual about him?" Noah asked, studying the cub. "Besides being small, I mean." "Look at his eyes," Dr. Roswell said. As if on cue, the cub opened his eyes, revealing irises of an unusual amber gold color, startlingly light against his dark fur. "Normally, black bears have dark brown eyes," the doctor explained. "This golden color is extremely rare. I've only seen it once before, in a cub that was eventually killed by its own mother." Olivia reached out and touched the cub's face gently, right below one of his golden eyes. "Pretty," she said clearly. Dr. Roswell watched the interaction with fascination. "The native people who lived in these mountains long before us had legends about bears with golden eyes," he said softly. "They believed they were spirit bears, messengers between the animal world and the human world, sacred, but often feared by their own kind for being different." Emma felt a chill run through her. "What happened to the ones with golden eyes?" The doctor shrugged. "According to the legends, most didn't survive. Their own kind drove them out or killed them. Occasionally, a golden-eyed bear was protected by humans who recognized its significance." He looked at Olivia with newfound curiosity. "The legends said that these bears sought out humans who had pure hearts, often children." Noah cleared his throat, uncomfortable with the mystical turn of the conversation. "So, practically speaking, what do we do now?" Dr. Roswell seemed to snap back to his scientific mindset. "I need to sedate him to set that paw properly. Then antibiotics, fluids, and proper nutrition." He looked between Noah and Emma. "But I have to ask, what are your intentions here? This isn't a pet, he's a wild animal. and eventually he'll grow into a very large, potentially dangerous one. Before either parent could answer, Olivia spoke again, her voice clear and determined despite her limited vocabulary. "Ba, stay, fix ba." The adults exchanged glances, all struck by the unusual articulation from such a young child. "I think my daughter has made her opinion known," Emma said softly. "We'll help him heal, and then we'll figure it out. One step at a time." Dr. Roswell nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Let me get my supplies. I'll need your help, Noah. This won't be easy, but if we're careful, we can give this little fellow a fighting chance." As the men stepped outside to retrieve the doctor's equipment, Emma found herself alone with Olivia and the cub. Her daughter was humming again, her small hand resting on the cub's side, rising and falling with each breath. "What do you see in him, Olivia?" Emma whispered. "What do you understand that we don't?" Olivia looked up at her mother, her eyes wise beyond their years. She patted the cub's head and said simply, "Friend." Something in her daughter's gaze made Emma believe that this single word contained all the explanation they would ever need. While Dr. Roswell and Noah prepared to treat the cub, darkness fell over Pinewood Valley. Outside, unseen but felt, the scarred male bear circled back toward the cabin, drawn by instinct and rage to finish what he had started, to eliminate the golden-eyed anomaly that challenged the natural order of his domain. The surgery to set the cub's broken paw was delicate and tense. Dr. Roswell worked with steady hands, despite his age, guiding Noah through each step. Emma kept Olivia in the nursery, away from the necessary but difficult procedure, distracting her with stories and toys. "The bone fragments need to be aligned just so," Dr. Roswell murmured, manipulating the tiny bones with specialized forceps. "Bears have a remarkable ability to heal, but only if we get this right." Noah held the cub still, marveling at how small and vulnerable the wild animal seemed under sedation. Why would the other bears target him so specifically? Just because of his eye color? Dr. Roswell glanced up briefly. "Nature can be cruelly intolerant of difference, Noah. Anything that stands out becomes a target." He carefully inserted a small metal pin to stabilize the bone. "But there may be more to it. Golden-eyed bears are said to have abilities that others don't." "What kind of abilities?" Noah asked skeptically. The doctor's focus remained on his work. "The legends say they can sense emotions, form connections with humans, even share dreams or visions. Nonsense to our scientific minds, perhaps, but these stories persist for a reason." He began to stitch the wound closed with tiny, precise sutures. "Your daughter seems to understand him in a way that defies conventional explanation." Noah thought about Olivia's behavior, her immediate bond with the cub, her unusual speech development since its arrival, the way they seemed to communicate without words. It was unsettling but also undeniably special. "Almost done, Doctor," Roswell said. "Hand me that bandage, please." As Noah reached for the supplies, a sudden, powerful impact shook the entire cabin. The windows rattled in their frames, and a low, guttural roar penetrated the walls. "He's back," Noah whispered, his face draining of color. "The male bear." Dr. Roswell continued wrapping the cub's paw, his hands remarkably steady despite the danger. "Finish this," he instructed Noah. "I need to prepare a stronger sedative in case our visitor breaks through." Another powerful blow struck the door, wood splintering slightly under the force. From the nursery, they heard Olivia begin to cry. Not her usual tears, but something more primal, almost like a warning. Emma rushed in, clutching Olivia. "He's trying to get in through the front door," she gasped. "The boards are starting to give way." Noah took the rifle down from above the fireplace, checking to make sure it was loaded. "Stay in the back bedroom," he instructed Emma. "Take Olivia and lock the door." "The cub," Emma protested. "He's still sedated. He can't defend himself." "I'll move him once I've finished," Dr. Roswell assured her, tying off the final bandage. Another crash, louder this time. The front door bulged inward ominously. "Go now," Noah urged. As Emma turned to flee with Olivia, the baby suddenly began to struggle violently in her mother's arms. "Bah!" she screamed, reaching toward the sedated cub. "Bah, danger!" The cub, despite being heavily medicated, lifted his head groggily, his golden eyes finding Olivia's. Something seemed to pass between them, a message or understanding that none of the adults could interpret. Then, to everyone's astonishment, the cub struggled to his feet, swaying unsteadily on 3 good legs, the freshly bandaged paw held carefully off the ground. He made a soft chuffing sound toward Olivia, who immediately stopped crying. "Impossible," Dr. Roswell breathed. "That dose should have kept him unconscious for hours." The front door splintered further, a massive paw with razor-sharp claws punching through the wood. Noah raised his rifle, aiming at the opening, but his hands trembled with the knowledge that a shot might not stop a full-grown male bear in a rage. "Get back!" he shouted to Emma and Olivia. But instead of retreating, Olivia squirmed free of her mother's grasp and toddled directly to the injured cub. "Olivia, no!" Emma cried, lunging after her. But before anyone could intervene, Olivia placed both hands on the cub's head and pressed her forehead against his, just as she had done earlier. The cub went completely still, his golden eyes locked with hers. Then something extraordinary happened. The cub turned toward the splintering door, planted his 3 good paws firmly on the ground, and emitted a sound that should have been impossible for his small body, a roar so deep and powerful it seemed to come from the earth itself. The assault on the door stopped abruptly. Through the broken slats, they could see the massive male bear freeze, its black eyes widening in what looked eerily like fear. The cub roared again, the sound reverberating through the cabin like thunder. With each passing second, it seemed to grow louder, deeper, more ancient, as if the cub were channeling something far larger than himself. Outside, the adult bear took a hesitant step backward, then another. It rose briefly on its hind legs, sniffing the air with confusion, before dropping back to all fours. With one final, uncertain glance at the cabin, it turned and lumbered quickly back into the forest, disappearing into the darkness as suddenly as it had arrived. Inside, a profound silence fell. The cub swayed on his feet, the supernatural effort clearly having drained his limited strength. His eyes rolled back, and he collapsed onto his side, unconscious once more. Olivia immediately sat beside him, placing her small hand on his rising and falling chest. "Bah, sleep now," she announced calmly, as if the extraordinary event had been completely normal. Noah, Emma, and Dr. Roswell exchanged stunned glances, none of them able to explain what they had just witnessed. "That ... Noah stammered, lowering his unfired rifle. "That wasn't natural." Dr. Roswell knelt beside the cub, checking his vital signs with trembling hands. "No," he agreed quietly. "It wasn't. But then, I'm beginning to think there's nothing natural about this cub at all." Emma joined Olivia on the floor, wrapping a protective arm around her daughter. "What just happened, doctor?" "How could he make that sound?" The elderly veterinarian shook his head slowly. "The legends speak of golden-eyed bears having voices that could command other animals, even other bears. I always thought it was metaphorical." He looked at Olivia with newfound respect and perhaps a hint of awe. and they were said to form bonds with special humans who could amplify their abilities. "She's just a baby," Emma protested weakly. "Perhaps that's exactly why," Dr. Roswell suggested. "No preconceptions, no learned fears or doubts, just pure connection." He straightened up with effort. "Whatever the explanation, I think we can agree that this cub is not going anywhere anytime soon, and neither, I suspect, is the danger." Noah began gathering materials to repair the damaged door. "You think the male will come back?" "Eventually," Dr. Roswell confirmed grimly. "Whatever drove him to target this cub hasn't been resolved. He'll return once the fear wears off." Emma looked down at her daughter, still vigilantly watching over the sleeping cub. "Then we'll be ready," she said with quiet determination. "Because Olivia's right, he's staying, at least until he's healed." Dr. Roswell nodded approvingly. "I'll come back tomorrow with more supplies. The cub needs special formula, antibiotics, and a proper splint for when the swelling goes down." He patched his instruments together. "And perhaps some books on bear legends that I've collected over the years. I think we'd all benefit from learning more about what we're dealing with here." As the doctor prepared to leave, navigating carefully around the damaged door, he paused and looked back at the unlikely scene. A human baby protectively watching over a bear cub, their fates somehow intertwined by forces beyond rational explanation. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "the old stories say that when a golden-eyed bear chooses a human companion, both their lives are forever changed, destinies altered, new paths created." "For better or worse?" Noah asked, still processing everything that had happened. Dr. Roswell smiled mysteriously. "That, my friend, depends entirely on the choices you make from this moment forward." He nodded toward Olivia and the cub. "But looking at those two, I'd say the journey has already begun, whether you're ready or not." With those cryptic words, he slipped out into the night, leaving the Murphy family to contemplate their new reality. One where the natural laws they had always accepted seemed suddenly flexible, and where the boundary between human and animal had become beautifully, terrifyingly blurred. Word spread quickly through Pinewood Valley about the Murphy family and their unusual guest. Despite Noah and Emma's efforts to keep the situation private, Dr. Roswell's repeated visits to their remote cabin aroused curiosity in the small, tight-knit community. Rumors flew about a sick bear, a dangerous rescue, and, most intriguingly, about little Olivia Murphy's strange connection to the wild animal. By the end of the first week, Emma noticed unfamiliar vehicles occasionally slowing down as they passed the long driveway leading to their cabin. Some neighbors dropped by with casseroles or baked goods, their expressions of concern barely masking their desire to glimpse the mysterious cub. The cub, whom Olivia had firmly named Goldie for his unusual eyes, was recovering slowly but steadily. His fever had broken after 3 days of antibiotics, and the swelling in his paw had diminished enough for Dr. Roswell to replace the temporary bandage with a proper cast. His appetite had returned with impressive force, necessitating special trips into town for the nutrient-rich formula the doctor had prescribed. "He's drinking almost a gallon a day now," Emma told Noah as they watched Goldie lapping eagerly from a large bowl. "Dr. Roswell says it's a good sign, but at this rate we'll need to take out a loan just to feed him." Noah smiled faintly. Despite his initial reservations, he had grown attached to the cub's determined spirit. "We'll manage. My contract work picked up this month, and we've got some savings." What neither of them mentioned was how their lives had begun to revolve entirely around Goldie and his care. Noah had constructed a secure enclosure in the living room, though it remained largely unused since Olivia insisted on keeping the cub near her at all times. They had established a routine of exercises to strengthen his healing paw, and Emma had researched everything she could find about black bear nutrition and development. But most remarkable was the change in Olivia. Their once quiet daughter now chattered constantly, her vocabulary expanding almost overnight. She spoke directly to Goldie in full, clear sentences that she never used with her parents, as if the cub understood every word. And, strangest of all, Goldie seemed to respond, reacting to her voice with an intelligence that sometimes made Emma and Noah exchange worried glances. On this particular morning, as rain drummed against the roof, Olivia sat on the floor with Goldie, reading him a picture book about woodland animals. "See the deer, Goldie? You don't chase deer, they friends," she instructed seriously, pointing to the illustration. The cub tilted his head, his golden eyes following her finger with focused attention. When she turned the page to an image of rabbits, Goldie made a soft, huffing sound. "Yes, rabbits hop fast," Olivia agreed, as if responding to a comment. "Too fast for catching." Emma, watching from the kitchen as she prepared lunch, felt that familiar mixture of wonder and unease. Her daughter was having a conversation with a wild animal, and the wild animal was undeniably participating. A knock at the door startled them all. Goldie immediately pressed himself against Olivia's side, his ears flattening slightly. Noah appeared from his home office, frowning. "Are we expecting anyone?" Emma shook her head. "Dr. Roswell isn't due until tomorrow." Another knock, more insistent this time. Noah approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole. His shoulders stiffened. "It's Sheriff Tanner," he murmured to Emma. "And he's not alone." Emma hurriedly scooped up Goldie, who had grown considerably but was still small enough to carry, and ducked into the hallway with Olivia following close behind. Noah waited until they were out of sight before opening the door. Sheriff Dave Tanner stood on the porch, his weathered face set in official lines. Beside him was a tall, severe-looking man in a Department of Wildlife uniform. "Morning, Noah," the sheriff said, nodding curtly. "This here is Agent Willard from the State Wildlife Commission. We'd like to have a word, if you don't mind." Noah hesitated, then stepped aside to let them enter. "What can I help you with, Sheriff?" Agent Willard's sharp eyes scanned the living room, taking in the makeshift enclosure, the scattered toys, and most tellingly the specialized formula bottles on the coffee table. "Mr. Murphy," he began without preamble, "we've received reports that you're harboring a wild bear on your property without proper authorization. As I'm sure you're aware, that constitutes a violation of state wildlife regulations." Noah crossed his arms defensively. "I'm not sure what you've heard, but—" "Noah," Sheriff Tanner interrupted, his tone gentler than his companion's. "We know about the cub. Dr. Roswell confided in my wife at church last Sunday. He was concerned about potential disease risks, given how close the animal is to your daughter." From the hallway, Emma heard Olivia whisper to Goldie, "Shh, quiet now." She held her breath, praying the cub wouldn't make any noise to give away their hiding place. "The doctor was out of line," Noah argued. "He's been treating an injured animal, which, last I checked, isn't illegal." Agent Willard's mouth tightened. "Treating is one thing. Keeping is another. Black bears are protected wildlife in this state, Mr. Murphy. They cannot be privately owned or domesticated regardless of circumstance." "We're not domesticating him," Noah insisted. "We're rehabilitating him until he's well enough to release." "Without a wildlife rehabilitation license," Agent Willard challenged, "that's still illegal. And from what I understand, this cub has been rejected by its own kind. It can never be successfully reintroduced to the wild." Sheriff Tanner placed a restraining hand on the agent's arm. "What Willard is trying to say, Noah, is that there are proper channels for this sort of thing. Licensed facilities with trained staff who know how to handle wild predators. You mean zoos, Noah said flatly. Or research facilities. Or humane euthanasia, Agent Willard added dispassionately. If the animal is indeed unreleasable, and no suitable facility can be found. Emma couldn't contain herself any longer. She stepped into the room, careful to block Olivia and Goldie from view. You want to kill him? After everything he's survived? The men turned, startled by her sudden appearance. Agent Willard recovered quickly. Mrs. Murphy, I understand your attachment, but this is a matter of public safety and wildlife conservation law. That animal will grow into a 300-pound predator with natural hunting instincts. No amount of human imprinting will change that fundamental nature. You don't understand, Emma began, but fell silent as Olivia suddenly pushed past her, marching boldly into the living room with Goldie limping determinedly at her side. No hurt, Goldie, she declared, standing protectively in front of the cub. He good bear, he special. The two officials stared in astonishment at the tiny girl confronting them, and at the bear cub who sat obediently behind her, his golden eyes watching them with an unnerving intelligence. For a moment, no one spoke. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence. Agent Willard recovered first, his professional demeanor reasserting itself. Ma'am, this is exactly the kind of dangerous imprinting I'm talking about. Your daughter thinks this is a pet. He's not a pet, Olivia said firmly, surprising everyone with her clear articulation. He's my friend. He talks to me. Sheriff Tanner knelt down to Olivia's level, his weathered face softening. Honey, bears don't talk. They're wild animals. Not with words, Olivia explained patiently, as if the adults were being particularly slow to understand. With feelings, with pictures in my head. She turned to Goldie and placed her small hand on his head. Show them, Goldie. Show them who hurt you. Before anyone could react, Goldie raised his head and let out a soft melodic sound. Nothing like the ferocious roar that had driven away the male bear, but something almost musical. The sound seemed to expand, filling the room with a strange resonance that made the air shimmer slightly. And then, impossibly, something like a vision flickered in the middle of the living room. Hazy and translucent, but unmistakable. A large male bear with a scarred face, standing over Goldie, striking him repeatedly with massive paws. A mother bear, watching from a distance but not intervening. Other cubs turning away. Goldie alone and bleeding, dragging himself away from the pack, his golden eyes reflecting pain and confusion. The vision lasted only seconds before dissolving, but its impact was profound. Sheriff Tanner had stumbled backward, his face pale. Agent Willard stood frozen, his clipboard hanging limply from suddenly nerveless fingers. What the hell was that? The agent whispered, all officiousness gone from his voice. Dr. Roswell chose that moment to appear in the doorway, having arrived for an unscheduled visit. That, Agent Willard, he said calmly, stepping into the cabin, was why I've been treating this cub in secret, against my better judgment and certainly against regulations. He nodded toward Goldie. He's not an ordinary bear. Agent Willard shook his head, visibly struggling to process what he'd witnessed. That's not possible. Bears can't project images. They can't communicate telepathically. This is some kind of trick. Is it? Dr. Roswell challenged. He turned to Sheriff Tanner. Dave, you saw it too. Can you explain it? The sheriff ran a shaking hand over his face. No, Sam, I can't. Olivia had grown bored with the adult's confusion. She sat cross-legged on the floor, Goldie's head now resting in her lap as she stroked his ears. Goldie is special, she said matter-of-factly. The other bears were scared of him, but I'm not scared. Out of the mouths of babes, Dr. Roswell murmured. He turned to Agent Willard. I'm afraid your wildlife regulations don't cover this particular situation, sir. We're dealing with something extraordinary. This doesn't change anything legally, Agent Willard insisted, though with notably less conviction. Regardless of any unusual abilities, this is still a wild animal being kept without proper authorization. Noah stepped forward. Then help us get authorization. There must be some kind of special permit, some exception for unique circumstances. There isn't, Agent Willard said flatly. The law is clear. Sheriff Tanner had been watching Olivia and Goldie, his expression thoughtful. What if, he said slowly, we registered the cub as part of a scientific study? Sam, you still have your research credentials from the university, don't you? Dr. Roswell's eyes lit up. I do indeed. Emeritus status, but still valid. And this specimen certainly warrants scientific investigation. He turned to Agent Willard. Your department does issue permits for legitimate wildlife research, I believe? The agent frowned. Yes, but then it's settled, Sheriff Tanner interrupted. Sam will file the paperwork to register this as an official research project, with the Murphy property designated as a temporary field station. He fixed Agent Willard with a stern look. Unless you'd prefer to file an official report describing what we just saw. I'm sure your superiors would be fascinated to hear about telepathic bear cubs that can project visions. Agent Willard's face contorted as he weighed his options. This is highly irregular, he muttered. Welcome to Pinewood Valley, Dr. Roswell said with a slight smile. We specialize in irregular. After several tense minutes of negotiation, Agent Willard reluctantly agreed to hold off on any enforcement action pending the filing of Dr. Roswell's research permit application. He left with stern warnings about public safety and containment protocols, clearly eager to distance himself from the unsettling experience. Sheriff Tanner lingered behind, watching Olivia and Goldie with undisguised fascination. Emma, Noah, he said quietly, you understand that this can't remain a secret forever. Not in a town this size. We know, Emma acknowledged. But we need time. Time for Goldie to heal. Time to understand what's happening here. The sheriff nodded thoughtfully. My wife's grandmother was half Cherokee. She used to tell stories about spirit animals that could bridge worlds. He shook his head, as if surprised by his own words. Never thought I'd see anything like that in my lifetime. Neither did we, Noah admitted. But here we are. Before leaving, Sheriff Tanner crouched beside Olivia one more time. You take good care of your friend, honey, and remember, not everyone will understand how special he is. Some folks might be scared. Olivia nodded solemnly. I know. Goldie knows too. That's why he needs me. The sheriff tipped his hat and departed, leaving the family and Dr. Roswell to process the events of the morning. Well, Dr. Roswell said, setting down his medical bag, I believe we've just entered new territory. Scientifically, ethically, and perhaps spiritually as well. He gestured to Goldie. Shall we check our patient's progress? As the doctor examined Goldie's healing paw, Emma pulled Noah aside. Do you think it will work, this research permit idea? Noah ran a hand through his hair. I don't know, but it buys us time. He glanced at their daughter, who was explaining each step of the examination to Goldie in her newfound, articulate way. What happened here today, Emma? That vision, or whatever it was? I know, she whispered. It changes everything. Dr. Roswell joined them, his expression grave. The physical healing is proceeding nicely, he reported. But there's something else you should know. He lowered his voice. Just now, when I was checking his reflexes, I had well, I suppose you'd call it a flash, a mental image of a cave deep in the mountains, and a sense of tremendous danger. Goldie showed you? Emma asked. The doctor nodded. I believe he's trying to communicate something important, something beyond his own injury. He looked troubled. The feeling I got was one of urgency, as if time is running out. For what? Noah pressed. That, Dr. Roswell said solemnly, is what we need to find out. The next few days brought a flurry of activity to the Murphy household. Dr. Roswell, energized by the prospect of legitimate research, had set up a small laboratory in the spare bedroom, complete with monitoring equipment borrowed from his former university colleagues. He spent hours observing Goldie and Olivia, documenting their interactions and attempting to understand the nature of their unusual bond. It's not telepathy in the conventional sense, he explained to Noah and Emma over coffee one evening, after Olivia and Goldie had finally fallen asleep. It's more like emotional resonance, amplified to the point where specific images can be transferred. Olivia isn't reading Goldie's mind, and he's not reading hers. They're sharing a connection that transcends normal communication. But how is that possible? Noah asked, still struggling to reconcile the inexplicable events with his rational worldview. Dr. Roswell spread his hands. How does a migrating bird know where to fly when it's never made the journey before? How do twins separated at birth share identical dreams? There are forms of connection in this world that science has barely begun to understand. He tapped his notebook. What's particularly fascinating is that the connection seems to be strengthening. The images Goldie projects are becoming clearer, more detailed. And these images of the cave? Emma prompted. Have you learned anything more about that? The doctor's expression grew serious. Yes, and it's deeply concerning. From what I can piece together, there's a den deep in the northern mountains, perhaps 10 miles from here. It appears to be where Goldie was born, where his mother's pack lives. He hesitated, and where something terrible is happening. What kind of terrible? Noah asked. Disease, perhaps, or poisoning. Dr. Roswell opened his notebook to reveal rough sketches of bears lying prone, seemingly ill or injured. Goldie's images show several bears in distress, including cubs. And there's something else. He turned the page to a drawing of what appeared to be human figures approaching the cave. Humans are involved somehow. Goldie associates them with fear and danger. Emma's face paled. Are you saying someone is deliberately harming the bears? I don't know, Doctor, Roswell admitted. The images are still fragmented, emotional rather than factual. But there's definitely a connection between the humans Goldie fears and whatever is afflicting his former pack. Noah pushed back from the table, suddenly restless. This is insane. We're interpreting images projected by a bear cub that shouldn't be able to project images in the first place. And yet, Dr. Roswell said quietly, you saw it too. We all did. The conversation was interrupted by a soft sound from the doorway. Olivia stood there in her pajamas, her face serious beyond her years. Goldie is scared, she announced. The bad man is hurting more bears. We have to help them. Emma rushed to her daughter, kneeling to embrace her. Sweetheart, what bad man? Can you tell us? Olivia nodded solemnly. The man with the silver on his face. She touched her cheek. Here and here. He puts something in the water and it makes the bears sick. Her lower lip trembled. Goldie's mama is sick now, too. Noah and Dr. Roswell exchanged alarmed glances. Silver on his face, the doctor mused. Facial piercings, perhaps. Or scars, Noah suggested grimly. Olivia, honey, Emma said gently. "Did Goldie show you where this is happening?" The little girl nodded again. "In the big mountain with the face." "Old Man's Bluff," Noah said immediately. "The northern cliff that looks like a profile. There are caves all through that area." He turned to Dr. Roswell. "Is it possible? Could someone be deliberately poisoning the water source near a bear den?" The doctor looked grim. "It's not only possible, it's happened before, usually by ranchers or farmers trying to eliminate predators they see as threats to livestock." He stroked his chin thoughtfully. "But the bears in that region don't typically bother human settlements. They have plenty of natural food sources." "Then why?" Emma asked, still holding Olivia close. Dr. Roswell shook his head. "I don't know, but if Goldie's images are accurate and multiple bears are being poisoned, we need to alert the authorities." Noah laughed bitterly. "And tell them what? That our daughter's telepathic bear cub told us about it? They'll think we're insane." "Not necessarily, Doctor," Roswell countered. "We don't have to reveal the source. We can simply report suspicious activity near Old Man's Bluff. I know the regional wildlife officer, not Willard, thankfully, but a reasonable woman named Diane Chen. She takes environmental crimes seriously." Emma looked down at Olivia, whose eyes were wide with worry. "What do you think, sweetheart? Should we try to help the other bears?" Olivia nodded emphatically. "Goldie says yes, but we have to hurry. The moon is coming." "The moon?" Dr. Roswell echoed, puzzled. "I think she means the full moon," Noah suggested. "That's in 3 days." "Why is the full moon significant?" Emma wondered aloud. Olivia shrugged, the gesture oddly adult on her small frame. "Goldie just says it's important. The bad man does something when the moon is full." The conversation was abruptly interrupted by a crashing sound from the living room, followed by an alarmed yelp from Goldie. Noah was on his feet instantly, rushing toward the noise with Emma close behind, still carrying Olivia. They found Goldie standing rigidly in the center of the room, his fur bristling, golden eyes fixed on the window. The crash had been a lamp, apparently knocked over in his sudden movement. "What is it, boy?" Noah asked, scanning the darkness beyond the glass. "What do you see?" Goldie growled softly, the sound rumbling deep in his chest. He was no longer the small, frail cub they had rescued. 2 weeks of proper nutrition and care had transformed him into a sturdy young bear, his once patchy fur now thick and glossy, his injured paw almost completely healed. Noah approached the window cautiously, peering out into the night. At first, he saw nothing but shadows. Then, at the edge of the forest, a flicker of movement caught his eye. A figure, tall and lean, standing just beyond the reach of the porch light. "There's someone out there," he whispered, reaching for the rifle he now kept near the door. Goldie's growl intensified, and suddenly a new image flashed in the air before them. The same scarred-faced man from Olivia's description, but now clearer, more detailed. A gaunt face with what indeed appeared to be silver scars trailing down one cheek. Cold eyes, a cruel smile. "It's him," Olivia whispered, pressing her face against her mother's shoulder. "The bad man." Noah checked that the rifle was loaded, his hand steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "Stay here," he instructed. "Lock the door behind me." "Noah, no!" Emma protested. "Call the sheriff. By the time he gets here, whoever's out there will be long gone." Noah's jaw set with determination. "I'm just going to talk to him, find out what he wants." Before Emma could argue further, Goldie suddenly bounded forward, placing himself between Noah and the door. The bear cub, no, young bear now, stood firm, his message clear even without telepathic images. No one was going outside. As if confirming this decision, the telephone rang, startling everyone. Dr. Roswell answered it, his face growing increasingly grave as he listened. "I see," he said finally. "Yes, we'll be careful. Thank you for the warning, Dave." He hung up and turned to the others. That was Sheriff Tanner. A man named Victor Reinhardt was released from the state penitentiary last week. He was arrested 3 years ago for illegal hunting and animal cruelty, specifically torturing and killing bears. Emma's hand flew to her mouth. "And you think that's who's outside?" "The sheriff thinks it's a possibility," Dr. Roswell confirmed. "Reinhardt threatened the wildlife officer who arrested him, swore he'd get revenge. And he has a distinctive scar on his right cheek from a bear attack that precipitated his killing spree." Noah lowered the rifle slightly, processing this new information. Why would he come here? How would he even know about Goldie? Dr. Roswell looked grim. "News travels fast in small towns, Noah. Despite our best efforts, rumors about a special bear cub at the Murphy place have been circulating for days. If Reinhardt has a pathological hatred of bears, especially ones that have injured him, he might see Goldie as a target," Emma finished, hugging Olivia tighter. Noah returned to the window, but the figure at the forest's edge had vanished. "He's gone," he reported. "But I don't think he's gone far." As if in agreement, Goldie padded to the center of the room and projected another image. This one of the scarred man watching the cabin from different positions, clearly surveilling them. The message was unmistakable. They were being stalked. "We need to leave," Emma said decisively. "Now, tonight. It's not safe here." "And go where?" Noah asked. "If this Reinhardt is as dangerous as the sheriff suggests, running might just make us more vulnerable." Dr. Roswell had been quiet, his scientific mind clearly working through the problem. "There's another possibility," he said slowly. "What if we use this situation to our advantage?" The others looked at him in confusion. "Reinhardt is clearly interested in Goldie," the doctor explained. "And Goldie has been trying to communicate that something terrible is happening to the other bears, possibly poisoning by a man with silver scars on his face." "You think Reinhardt is poisoning the bears at Old Man's Bluff?" Noah asked, making the connection. "It fits, Doctor," Roswell said grimly. "A man with a pathological hatred of bears, recently released from prison, with distinctive facial scars. And now we find him surveilling the one bear cub that escaped and might be able to identify him." Emma looked horrified. "But why? Why poison an entire den of bears?" "Revenge," Dr. Roswell suggested. "Or perhaps something more practical. Bear parts, gallbladders, paws, fetch high prices on the black market, particularly in certain Asian countries. It would be easier to harvest organs from poisoned bears than to hunt them individually." "That's monstrous," Emma whispered. "Yes," the doctor agreed solemnly. "Which is why we need to stop him. And to do that, we need evidence." Noah understood immediately. "You want to catch him in the act." "With the sheriff's help, yes. If we can document Reinhardt poisoning the water source, we can put him away for good and potentially save the bears at Old Man's Bluff." "It's too dangerous," Emma protested. "This man is clearly deranged, and he's already watching our house." Dr. Roswell nodded acknowledgement. "Yes, which gives us an advantage. He doesn't know that we're aware of him or of his activities at the den, and he certainly doesn't know that Goldie has been communicating with us." Noah considered this, his protective instincts warring with the need to address the larger threat. "If we do this, Emma and Olivia need to be somewhere safe, completely away from here." "My sister's place in the city," Emma suggested immediately. "We could visit for a few days." Olivia, who had been quietly listening to the adult conversation, suddenly spoke up. Number Goldie needs me, and the other bears need Goldie. Everyone turned to look at the little girl, surprised by her firm declaration. Sweetie, Emma began gently, it's not safe. Olivia shook her head stubbornly. Goldie can't talk to you without me. He needs me to help. She looked at each adult in turn, her young face set with determination. The bad man hurts bears because they hurt him. He's scared and angry, like Goldie was, but hurting back just makes more hurt. The profound simplicity of her words silenced the adults. Goldie moved to her side, pressing his warm bulk against her small body in clear agreement. From the mouths of babes, Dr. Roswell murmured, echoing his words from days earlier. Noah knelt before his daughter, looking directly into her clear, innocent eyes. Olivia, this is very dangerous. The bad man might try to hurt you or Goldie or Mommy. We want to keep you safe. Olivia reached out and touched her father's cheek, the gesture strangely mature. Sometimes safe isn't most important, Daddy. Sometimes helping is more important. Emma joined them on the floor, her eyes bright with unshed tears. When did you get so wise, my little love? Olivia smiled, suddenly a toddler again. Goldie helps me think bigger thoughts, and I help him think kinder thoughts. She looked at the young bear with obvious affection. We're better together. The adults exchanged glances, recognizing the truth in the child's simple wisdom. I'll call Sheriff Tanner back, Dr. Roswell said finally. We'll need his help to do this properly, and we'll need a plan that keeps Olivia as far from danger as possible while still allowing her to help Goldie communicate. Noah nodded, his mind already mapping out possibilities. The observation blind at Crescent Ridge would give us a clear view of the approach to Old Man's Bluff, he suggested. It's secure, elevated, and close enough for whatever connection Olivia and Goldie have, and we'll need cameras, Dr. Roswell added. Documentation of Reinhardt's activities will be crucial for prosecution. As the adults began formulating their plan, Olivia sat quietly with Goldie, her small fingers buried in his thick fur. The young bear's golden eyes were fixed on her face with an expression that, despite his animal features, could only be described as devotion. Don't worry, she whispered to him. We'll help your mama and the other bears. The bad man won't hurt them anymore. Goldie made a soft rumbling sound in his chest that vibrated against her hand. In the air between them, a wispy image formed, not of danger or fear this time, but of a bear cub and a human child standing together beneath a full moon, their silhouettes merging into something new, something powerful, a symbol of what they might become together if they could survive what lay ahead. The plan came together quickly, necessity driving their preparations. Sheriff Tanner arrived before dawn, bringing with him Deputy Maria Cortez, one of his most trusted officers and, fortuitously, an experienced wildlife photographer with excellent documentation skills. This is absolutely unofficial, the sheriff warned as they gathered around the kitchen table, map spread before them. If anything goes wrong, I was never here, and I certainly never authorized civilians to participate in a sting operation against a potentially dangerous criminal. Understood, Noah agreed. But you know we couldn't go to the Wildlife Commission with this. Not with the source of our information being... He trailed off, glancing toward the living room where Olivia sat with Goldie, both watching cartoons with identical expressions of absorption. The sight of his toddler daughter and a now 40-pound bear cub side by side on the sofa, sharing Cheerios from the same bowl, still struck him as surreal. I know, Sheriff Tanner said grimly. And technically, I should be shutting this whole situation down. But after what I saw, he shook his head. Some things transcend regulations. Deputy Cortez, a compact woman with shrewd eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, studied the map intently. Old Man's Bluff has 3 main approaches, she noted, tracing them with her finger. The game trail from the north, the dry stream bed from the east, and the ridge path from the south. The caves are most accessible from the eastern approach, which is likely where Reinhardt is introducing the poison, Dr. Roswell suggested. Probably into the small spring that feeds the pool in the main cavern. It's the bear's primary water source. You seem very familiar with these caves, Doc, Deputy Cortez observed. The elderly veterinarian nodded. I did my doctoral research on hibernation patterns in that very den 40 years ago. The layout probably hasn't changed much. Nature works on a longer time scale than we do. Sheriff Tanner pointed to a small clearing about a quarter-mile from the eastern approach. We'll set up our primary observation post here. Good sight lines, natural cover, and close enough to intercept Reinhardt if we catch him in the act. And the blind at Crescent Ridge? Noah asked, indicating the elevated position he had suggested earlier. That's where you'll be, the sheriff confirmed. You, Emma, Olivia, and... He hesitated. Goldie. With these high-powered binoculars, you'll have a clear view of the entire area, but you'll be well removed from any potential confrontation. Dr. Roswell will join us at the primary position since his wildlife expertise may be needed. Emma studied the map. The blind is nearly a mile from the caves. Will Olivia and Goldie still be able to connect from that distance? All eyes turned to Dr. Roswell, who spread his hands helplessly. We're in uncharted territory here. The connection doesn't seem to be limited by normal spatial constraints, but there's no way to be certain until we try. We'll bring walkie-talkies, Sheriff Tanner decided. Old-fashioned, but reliable in these mountains where cell service is spotty. If the connection doesn't work from the blind, we'll reassess. The planning continued, covering every contingency they could imagine. Dr. Roswell prepared antidotes for the most common poisons used against large mammals, while Deputy Cortez checked and rechecked her camera equipment. Noah gathered supplies for their observation post: food, water, blankets, first aid kit, knowing they might need to maintain their position through the night. Through it all, Olivia remained surprisingly calm, as if the gravity of the situation existed in a dimension separate from her childish understanding. She played with Goldie, read him stories, and occasionally conveyed messages from him that added crucial details to their planning: the location of the spring, the number of bears in the den, the patterns of Reinhardt's previous visits. As dusk approached, they made their final preparations. Noah loaded the family's SUV with their gear, while Sheriff Tanner and Deputy Cortez did the same with their unmarked patrol vehicle. Dr. Roswell administered a mild sedative to Goldie, just enough to keep him calm during the drive, and secured his medical supplies. Emma pulled Noah aside as he was checking the tire pressure, her face tight with worry. "Are we making a huge mistake?" she whispered. "Involving our daughter in this?" Noah embraced her, feeling the tension in her shoulders. "I've asked myself that 100 times today," he admitted. "But then I look at Olivia and Goldie together and I see something important, something bigger than us." He pulled back to meet her eyes. "I can't explain it, Emma, but I feel like they're supposed to do this together. Like, this is why they found each other." Emma nodded slowly. "I feel it too. It's just..." She glanced toward the house where Olivia was helping Dr. Roswell pack his bag, her little face serious with concentration. "She's so small. This is so dangerous." "We'll keep her safe," Noah promised. a mile away from any action, in a secure blind, with both of us right beside her. If anything feels wrong, we leave immediately. No questions, no arguments. This seemed to reassure Emma somewhat. She squared her shoulders and nodded. Okay, let's do this. As the sun dipped below the mountains, casting long shadows across Pinewood Valley, their small convoy set out. Sheriff Tanner and Deputy Cortez led in their vehicle, followed by Noah's SUV with Emma, Olivia, and a drowsy Goldie, and Dr. Roswell brought up the rear in his old truck. They traveled without headlights once they left the main road, using only the ambient light of the rising moon to guide them along the familiar forest tracks. The full moon would reach its zenith near midnight, the moment when, according to Olivia's cryptic message, the bad man does something. None of them knew exactly what that meant, but they were determined to be in position well beforehand. They reached the turnoff for Crescent Ridge just as true darkness fell. Sheriff Tanner pulled alongside Noah's vehicle, rolling down his window. "This is where we split up," he said quietly. "Follow the ridge trail to the observation blind. It's about half a mile in. We'll proceed to the primary position and maintain radio contact." He handed Noah a walkie-talkie. "Channel 3, voice activation. Keep it on at all times." Noah nodded, accepting the device. "Be careful. If Reinhardt is as dangerous as we think—" "We've dealt with dangerous men before," the sheriff assured him. "You just focus on keeping your family safe and helping us spot any activity near the caves." With a final nod, the sheriff's vehicle continued straight, while Noah turned onto the narrow track leading up to Crescent Ridge. The SUV climbed steadily, its four-wheel drive handling the rugged terrain with ease. In the back seat, Goldie was beginning to stir from his sedated state, making soft huffing sounds as he became more alert. Olivia, securely buckled into her car seat beside him, reached over to pat his head. "It's okay, Goldie. We're going to help your family now." The observation blind was exactly as Noah remembered it. A small, camouflaged structure built by the Forestry Service to monitor wildlife without disturbing them. It was essentially a tiny cabin with narrow viewing slits, weatherproof and solid, perched on the edge of the ridge with a commanding view of the valley below, including Old Man's Bluff and its cave system. Noah parked the SUV in a natural hollow behind the blind, where it would be hidden from view. He quickly unloaded their supplies while Emma helped Olivia out of her car seat. Goldie hopped down on his own, now fully awake and alert, his golden eyes scanning the unfamiliar surroundings with interest. The inside of the blind was sparse but functional. A narrow bench running along the viewing wall, a small table, and hooks for equipment. Noah set up the high-powered binoculars on their tripod and checked the sight lines. In the bright moonlight, the landscape below was surprisingly visible, the pale cliff face of Old Man's Bluff standing out against the darker forest like a beacon. "Perfect," he murmured, making minor adjustments to the binoculars. "We can see all three approaches clearly from here." Emma helped Olivia settle onto the bench, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders against the nighttime chill. Goldie immediately climbed up beside her, his warm bulk providing additional heat. The young bear seemed to understand the need for quiet, making only the softest of sounds as he pressed against Olivia's side. Noah switched on the walkie-talkie. "Tanner, this is Murphy. We're in position at the blind. Over." After a brief crackle of static, the sheriff's voice came through. "Copy that, Murphy. We're approaching the primary observation point now. No sign of activity yet at the caves. Over." "Roger that. We have clear visuals on all approaches. We'll report any movement. Over and out." As they settled in for their vigil, Emma produced a thermos of hot chocolate and some sandwiches. They ate quietly, the enormity of what they were doing, lying in wait for a potentially psychopathic bear killer while relying on the telepathic abilities of a toddler and a bear cub, seeming more surreal by the minute. "How long do we wait?" Emma whispered, checking her watch. It was just past 9. Sheriff Tanner said they'd maintain position until at least 2 a.m., Noah replied softly. "If nothing happens by then, we'll reassess." Olivia, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly sat up straighter. "He's coming," she announced, her voice clear in the silence of the blind. Noah and Emma exchanged alarmed glances. "Who's coming, sweetie?" Emma asked gently. "The bad man?" Olivia nodded, her eyes unfocused as if seeing something beyond the physical space around them. "He has the hurting water with him, and—" She frowned, concentrating. "Something else, something that shines." Noah grabbed the walkie-talkie. "Tanner, this is Murphy. Olivia says Reinhardt is approaching, carrying poison and something that shines. No visual confirmation yet from our position. Over." "Copy that," came the sheriff's tense reply. "We're on high alert. Let us know if you spot anything. Over." Noah trained the binoculars on the eastern approach to the caves, scanning methodically. For several long minutes he saw nothing. Then a flicker of movement caught his eye, a shadow detaching itself from the deeper darkness of the forest. "I've got movement," he reported into the walkie-talkie. Eastern approach, approximately 200 yards from the cave entrance. Single figure, moving deliberately, over. "Copy that," Sheriff Tanner responded. "We see him too. Holding position until we confirm. Identity and activity. Over." Through the binoculars, Noah watched as the figure, definitely a man, moved with practiced stealth toward the cave entrance. He carried a backpack and what appeared to be a long walking stick, though in the moonlight details were difficult to discern. Beside him, Olivia suddenly gasped. Goldie had risen to his feet on the bench, his attention fixed on the scene below, a low growl building in his chest. "It's him," Olivia whispered. "The bad man. He's—" She paused, her face scrunching in concentration. "He's happy. He thinks today is special because of the full moon. He has something shiny, a knife with marks on it." Noah relayed this information to Sheriff Tanner, his voice tight with tension. Through the binoculars he could now see the man more clearly as he approached the cave entrance. Tall and lean, with something indeed glinting at his belt, a large hunting knife perhaps. "Tanner. Suspect is approaching cave entrance now, armed with what appears to be a large knife. Still carrying backpack, likely containing the poison. Over." "Copy that," came the sheriff's response. "We're moving into intercept position. Stand by. Over." The figure, Reinhardt presumably, paused at the cave entrance, glancing around as if checking for witnesses. Satisfied he was alone, he entered the darkness of the cave. "Suspect has entered the cave," Noah reported. "No visual at this time." Olivia suddenly clutched her mother's arm, her eyes wide. "The bears are afraid," she whispered. "They're sick. They can't run away." Goldie was trembling now, a series of soft whimpers escaping his throat. His golden eyes glowed eerily in the darkness of the blind, and once again, the air seemed to shimmer with projected images. The interior of the cave this time, where several adult bears and cubs lay listless on the stone floor, obviously ill. A small underground pool gleamed in the center of the cave, and the dark silhouette of Reinhardt approached it, unscrewing something from his backpack. "He's poisoning the water again," Olivia narrated, her voice unnaturally calm for a child her age. "But that's not what the knife is for. The knife is for—" She trailed off, her small face contorting with distress. "For what, sweetheart?" Emma prompted gently, though her expression suggested she dreaded the answer. "For the bears that are already too sick," Olivia whispered. "He's going to take parts of them." Noah felt sick, but forced himself to relay this information to the sheriff. "Tanner, be advised. Suspect appears to be adding poison to the bear's water source and may be planning to harvest parts from bears that are already incapacitated. Over." "Copy that," came the grim reply. "We're entering the cave now. Stay in position. Over." For several agonizing minutes, nothing happened. The cave entrance remained dark and silent, with no sign of activity. Noah, Emma, and Olivia waited tensely, Goldie still trembling between them. Then, suddenly, a commotion erupted at the cave entrance. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness. Voices shouted commands and a figure burst out of the cave. Reinhardt, running at full speed, something clutched in his hand. "Suspect is fleeing," Noah reported urgently, "heading north along the game trail." The sheriff and deputy emerged from the cave in pursuit, but Reinhardt had a head start. In the bright moonlight, Noah could see the man's face clearly through the binoculars for the first time. Gaunt and wild-eyed, with silver scars slashing a hole.